All right. Well, welcome to Wednesday and welcome to Burnout Hiding in Plain Sight. I'm Dr. Sandra. I work with people and organizations who want to reduce burnout and reignite their power to do what really matters to them, to bring the difference to the world that they really feel they want to make. So today, we're talking about when it feels like you've lost yourself. We're going to jump into that. I just need to check one little tech thing. Make sure this video is showing up where it's supposed to show up. And let's see. Alrighty, I think I got it. Okay. So we think so. Okay. All right, looks like it's working. Welcome. Remember that if you have any thoughts or comments, you can type them into the comments wherever you are. And if I don't see them pop up on this stream, I will definitely go back and check all the little sites so that I can respond to you. So we're talking about this sense of losing yourself, which is one aspect of burnout. When I was thinking about this discussion, one of the things that came to my mind was the early research on burnout that Maslow did. And one of the components of burnout was described as depersonalization. So depersonalization includes that cynicism that we talk about now in burnout. But there's also this sort of other element where people felt like they were actually disconnecting from those that they were serving, that they didn't really see them as people anymore. There's a sort of loss of compassion. And many of them were service professionals. So you got to have a relationship with the people you're serving. But they'd reached that point where their emotional energy was just so low, they couldn't give anymore. And that's part of what happens when we reach this place, when we feel like we lost ourselves. Because you just think about this, right? You start a job, and I can use myself as an example. You start a position, and it feels like, oh, okay, this is exciting. I can do this. I can do this. These are the great things that are going to happen. This is going to help me do this. You think about how you're going to grow, how the organization is going to grow. You start to think about how these things complement you, right? How what's there that you can do, right? How the role complements who you want to be in the world. So when you get to this place where you have been in the depths of exhaustion and you feel like you've lost yourself, that part of seeing what the work means to you and what you mean to the work is just, it's non-existent. And that is one of the reasons that you might look at somebody you're working with and say, I can't even have any compassion for you. It could be a coworker, right? That it seems like whenever there's a deadline, and they're always the person who's like asking all the questions. They always seem to be behind or something like that. And they may just be as nervous as you are, and that's the way it shows up for them. And then you just are like, usually you can give them some compassion, like, hey, you got this, you did this before, right? But when you reach this point of feeling this exhausted in yourself, this sort of feeling like you're not even really yourself anymore because you've worked so hard and you've seen few gains, that you don't have that compassion anymore. So that's sort of disconnecting from people. But there's another sort of disconnection that happens as well, this disconnection from you. There was a researcher years ago, she called it the silencing of the self. There was also a study done with Black women looking at the relationship between racism and sexism in Black women's lives, and looking at mental health challenges that Black women face. And they talked about this what they call this sisterella complex, where the person's doing so much for other people, they're just outwardly extending all the time, that they don't even know who they are anymore. So this is actually one of the ways that we can get to this disconnected place. We are the givers beyond giving, right? Like if somebody says somebody needs help, you might be the first person to raise your hand. You might be the first person in your office to raise your hand when somebody says, hey, there's a project, I got stuck, can you help me? So they start calling you the go-to person, except the go-to person sometimes is seen as the person who's the helper, not the person who's the leader. So you reach a point where you feel so overburdened, and then you don't have anything left to give, and you're wondering, well, how am I actually going to advance? How am I actually going to do what really matters to me? So that place is burnout, right? That's an aspect of burnout, is that we feel this disconnection from ourselves. So one of the keys, you might already beginning to get this idea, is to know what are the patterns that lead us to this place where we might feel this level of disconnection, or that we have to disengage because we just don't have anything left, right? So one is, you are the person who, the go-to person. I actually remember reading a book, I think it was How Women Rise. And in the book, they described a woman working in a law firm. And there's, committees and different things that happen. And so that are outside of the work of serving clients, or, demonstrating your acumen and your ability to be a partner or whatever, right? So she would volunteer for various committees, and she discovered that people would often just just go to her. Somebody would ask them something and they would say, oh no, ask so-and-so, right? So you get known as the person who will take on all the load. Why that happens? Hey, that can happen in many ways. Why you get to be that person, right? That's you can discover that, right? You can sort of begin to uncover, like, how did I get to that place where I'm the person? So you're the person who's always giving, and you keep taking that role on until you get to a point that you're so exhausted that it's like, oh, this wasn't really what I was aiming for. I wasn't aiming for this. So you've gotten off track from what you really, really wanted. It's great to help people. You just need some boundaries around how much you do it, particularly if you know that that's a part of who you are, right? And then sometimes this feeling like, this isn't me, this work isn't me, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, can come when something happens in your organization that disillusions you. So what just popped into my head was growing up and listening to my elders say things like, well, you would have to get, if you want to do that job, you'd have to get an extra degree to do that job. And so they would get the extra degree, right? So this feeling of, you have to go the extra mile to get something, and other people are getting these things without this, right? I thought of an example that a colleague and I discussed about a man who was really sort of mean to other people in the organization. And he was in a leadership role, but he had this way of being nasty to people. However, he ended up being promoted, and the people he was nasty to, they weren't promoted, right? He got a huge promotion. So you can get this sort of sense of disillusionment when you watch things like that happen. So you see this sort of lack of fairness that might exist in your organization, and you say, oh, whoa, right? So my elders are like, well, if somebody can get this with a high school degree, I know I'm going to have to get a college degree to do it, right? So they sort of expected that they were going to have to live with this unfairness, and they didn't really have much choice for most of the time, right? So this can happen to any of us, where we're in an organization where we feel like we're giving and we're moving, but the way things are being done feel like, oh my God, these are not the values. This is not the way you're supposed to treat people. So that level of disillusionment, particularly when you have been giving, you have been investing in this thing, right? And then, whoa, something happens and you say, wow, that is not fair. That's really, oh. So now you're like, how did I let myself get to this place where I'm in this position of working in a place where there's this lack of fairness, right? And so lack of fairness is actually one of the things that's associated with burnout. But sometimes, right, it slips up on us. Like we're just not catching, right? We're so busy working and giving that we're not necessarily noticing until there's like this, you've given so much, and then you get to the end of the line and you're like, wait a minute, how did I get overlooked in this thing? And that can take the air out of a person right away. I literally just thought of a friend of mine who gave their all to help an organization grow, restructure. And then when it came time for new positions to be filled that, that would give people promotion, they were overlooked. But they'd actually put in all the work to make the restructuring happen. That's how people burn out, right? So when you've lost yourself in that way, right, or you feel that disconnection from you, like you're disillusioned, or you feel like there's nothing left in you, like you don't know you anymore, you're doing things out of character. And so, of course, in some of those situations, people just get angry, right? That's how the cynicism, the resentment shows up, right? I'm mad, and rightfully so. But now you're also not being yourself, right? You're not working the way that feels right to you. Maybe even you can't get yourself out of bed, right? That you don't know what the work means to you and what you mean to the work anymore. So first thing is to know what pattern gets you there. So it's going to take some backtracking and looking back at, oh, I see what I was doing. I sort of noticed this, and I kind of let that pass. And noticing how you can show up for yourself along the way. How do you show up for yourself when you see like somebody might just be asking too much? Or you might have a little bit more extra going on in your family and you can't take on the extra at work. And so people need to be understanding of that. You might notice that there was some lack of fairness in your organization. Talk to someone about that. Now, some organizations aren't going to change, right? So the fact that it doesn't change doesn't mean that you're not right, okay? So there may be things that you can change or fix in that organization, but it doesn't mean you're not right in what you observe. So I would say you want to just start getting real close to what you really want to get from what you're doing in the world and what you really want to give to it. Just spend some time thinking about that and then noticing what are the ways that you sort of lead yourself away from that. Maybe taking on too many things, maybe sometimes, oh, this thing happened, but okay, I can let that pass. Something like that might be happening. Anything that leaves you at the end of the day feeling like, I don't know, something wasn't right, is calling you to sort of recalibrate, right? So again, I'm bringing you back to your own inner awareness. You have to listen to what's happening inside of you. Before you get to that point, you're so exhausted. And if you're already at that point, know that you can come back, right? Know that I've been there. You can come back. Yoga was one of my friends, but also this reassessing what I wanted. So even in your deepest exhaustion, you can still say to yourself, what is it that I do really want, right? And you can take some time to do some breathing, some recentering, so that you can ask yourself and listen and hear a little bit more. At first, it just may feel like gibberish because you're disconnected from you. And then the more you start to just breathe and sit and listen and maybe write. I'm also a journaler. I like when I get really sort of like this, I say, let me write about this. Let me see what's coming through. Then I look at it and let it guide me, right? So those are the tips that I think will help you if you are in that place. Know that it's possible to come back from that place. Know that it's possible, again, to determine what is the work that matches the meaning you want to bring to the world and do that work, right? So we're at about 14 minutes. And that's somewhere between 10 and 15 is where I like to be. I don't see any comments over here, and I don't have all the streams up. So, but I will check. So if you have any thoughts, or if there's something I said that you'd like to hear more about, you can also leave that as a comment. All right. Enjoy the rest of this Wednesday, and I'll see you probably maybe in about 2 weeks, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to come back in December once before I close down for the rest of the year. All right. Have a good one.